Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review comes from 1945, but it's in Technicolour, and it's John M Stahl's Leave Her to Heaven, starring Gene Tierney, Cornel Wilde, Vincent Price, and Jan Crane. This is a stunning film in Technicolour from 1945, and you will watch it and think, blimey, that kind of looks like a Douglas Sirk film. There's maybe a reason for that, because Douglas Sirk remade 3 John Stahl films, including Magnificent Obsession and Imitation of Life. And obviously the Douglas Sirk ones are that kind of blazing Technicolour, melodramatic stuff. This is a 2K restoration, this Criterion Blu-ray spine number 1020, but it looks absolutely amazing for a 2K. I can't even imagine what a 4K of this film would look like. Your eyes would probably pop out of your head. As always with Criterion, you get a lovely booklet with an essay, and this just has an interview with Imogen Sarah Smith, who's always very good, and that's a really nice piece of work, which Gene Tierney is certainly a piece of work in this film. So you could argue this is melodrama, this is quote unquote a woman's picture, but it also is a rather poisonous film noir, but in blazing daylight and blazing Technicolour. We join the film in this wonderful lakeside community, and Cornel Wilde gets in a little canoe and rides away from these people who seem to recognise him, and we're introduced to this character who knew him, and he says, oh yes, he spent 2 years in prison, but now he's back. So obviously we get a flashback to how they met and how the story gets started. Cornel Wilde is an author who meets Gene Tierney on a train, and they're all going up to this kind of resort with various characters, family members, and Gene Tierney and Cornel Wilde slowly develop a relationship. Tierney is already engaged to none other than Vincent Price. Yes, we get the bonus of Vincent Price, and he's running for, he's a DA, he has high hopes to be the governor and whatever, but Gene Tierney seems to fall for Cornel Wilde and jilts Vincent Price and wants to rush into marriage with Cornel Wilde. But Gene Tierney's character is somewhat obsessive, possessive, and quite frankly psychopathic. You know, in most film noirs, the femme fatale usually gets other people to do her dirty work. She usually manipulates and cajoles, blackmails characters with the possibility of sex and things like that to do her bidding. But in this film, Gene Tierney is less of a femme fatale and more of a force majeure. She does her dirty work by herself. And the film, you know, it's 115 minutes long. You could say it's a little slow in the build up. It could have perhaps been a little kind of more streamlined perhaps. But when it gets going, when Gene Tierney kind of shows her true colours, it's quite wonderful and will surprise you the kind of dark directions it goes. So Tierney is kind of sparked off with, Cornel Wilde has a disabled brother who ends up coming to stay with them. Relatives come over on their honeymoon, and you can pretty much tell that Gene Tierney actually wants to have sex. It's a film where a woman is the one that's actually frustrated and wants to have sex with her husband, and her husband is kind of blissfully unaware of this fact for some reason. So he has his brother hanging around the place. There's a kind of friend who does, chores around the estate, things like that. And they're all getting in Gene Tierney's way, basically. She gets very jealous of Cornel Wilde's love for his brother, his younger brother, who's just a kid, basically. But this infuriates her, and she decides to do something about it. She is very jealous of the friendship Cornel Wilde has with Jeanne Crane, who is Gene Tierney's cousin. But again, Gene Tierney doesn't like the fact that they're friendly and goes to extreme lengths to try and get this woman into trouble as well. Sadly, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but again, it becomes almost an otherworldly film. It almost becomes a supernatural film, as far as the lengths that Gene Tierney goes to get rid of people out of the picture, in more ways than one. It's a film that after you've watched it, you'll just kind of go, I can't believe they got away with that. Because as I said, it does go very dark in the last kind of third of the film. And Gene Tierney, I mean, again, I'm not a huge aficionado of the Oscars, but I don't understand how Gene Tierney didn't get an Oscar for this performance, because it's absolutely spectacular. Again, femme fatales in noirs sometimes have a kind of aura and a barrier around them. They don't get their hands dirty, they just let everybody else get their hands dirty. But Gene Tierney in this is absolutely gobsmackingly brilliant. She looks amazing, the way she moves. There's a wonderful scene where she's riding horseback, spreading somebody's ashes out of an urn across this beautiful vista. I mean, you don't see that very often in films. The only other kind of performance that I can kind of compare Tierney's performance to is perhaps Lisbeth Scott in Too Late for Tears. Just that kind of maniacal, obsessed, doesn't matter who gets hurt or how they get hurt. Both these women need to get what they want, whether in the case of Leave Her to Heaven it's Cornel Wilde's undivided attention and love, or in the case of Too Late for Tears, a suitcase full of money for Lisbeth Scott. But both these performances are absolutely wonderful. But Gene Tierney's performance in Leave Her to Heaven is perhaps one of my favourite female performances of all time. She's just absolutely incredible. And again, because it's in this blazing technicolour, as I say, it looks stunning. Again, how a 4K would improve on it, I have no idea. And Gene Tierney just floats through these beautiful vistas and setups. And yes, some of it, a lot of it, is kind of in a studio, and you can tell it's kind of in a studio with fake backdrops, but it's, for some reason it kind of works. The kind of artificiality, the kind of gloss and sheen that even Gene Tierney's character is portraying, but underneath the lengths she will go to, as far as even perhaps damaging her own body. Again, I'm not going to go into spoilers. Half the fun is just staring at the screen going, is she really going to do that? Yes, she's going to do that. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. Again, if you're being critical, you could argue it's maybe 10 minutes too long. But it's such a beautiful part of the countryside to be in. There's a shimmering sheen to the whole film. It's just so wonderful, and you can kind of see why Cirque might want to remake some of these films. He didn't remake Leave Her to Heaven, but he did remake, as I said, 3 John Stahl films, and gave them obviously more of a melodramatic twist. But this one's an absolute stunner, and one of the best central performances you'll ever see by anybody. So that's Leave Her to Heaven from 1945. On Criterion Blu-ray. It is a Region A Blu-ray, but for those of you multi-regional, it's just a wonderful, wonderful film, and I would highly recommend checking it out. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know what you think of Leave Her to Heaven, and hopefully join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.